Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to take a deep dive today into something that, well, it really shapes your digital life constantly, UI design.
Yeah, absolutely. It's how you interact with pretty much everything on a screen these days.
Exactly. And we've got some great source material to dig into here.
We do. And it's interesting. One source actually kicks off by asking, what is UX design?
Ah, right. Which hints straight away at this potential confusion, maybe, or at least an overlap we need to explore.
Definitely. There's often confusion between UI and UX.
So our mission today is to unpack what UI design really is, what someone doing this job actually does day to day.
And look at the skills and principles behind making those digital interactions feel, well, intuitive, seamless.
Maybe even enjoyable, right? Not frustrating.
Hopefully. It's this fascinating blend, the sources point out, of art, definitely some psychology, and technical skill, too.
Okay, so let's start right there. What is UI design, fundamentally?
Well, the sources define it as focusing squarely on the user's visual experience.
The visual part.
Yeah, when you're interacting with a digital products interface, an app, a website, a game,
Yeah.
it's what you see.
Got it. So it's about how things look.
It's about how they look, yes, but also its purpose is guiding how you navigate, how you get from point A to point B.
Through those visual touch points, like tapping a button or maybe swiping through pictures.
Exactly. Those are the mechanisms. But there's a really crucial psychological piece here.
Okay.
It's not just making things look pretty. You have to understand how people work, how they think.
Ah, so how visual cues and interaction actually shape the experience itself.
Precisely. The ultimate goal, as one source puts it, is to design interfaces that are so intuitive they require barely any thought from you.
That feeling of just knowing where to click or tap without even thinking.
That's the ideal, yeah.
Yeah,
And that doesn't happen by accident.
right. How is that achieved then?
UI designers use established patterns. They think carefully about spacing, about colors,
Mm-hmm.
all to gently guide you towards the actions you're expected to take, making it feel natural.
Which sounds like empathy is pretty critical here.
Hugely. A good UI designer is constantly trying to put themselves in the user's shoes.
Trying to anticipate what you would expect at each step.
Exactly. And then designing elements that respond just how you'd anticipate. It should feel logical.
So fundamentally, the UI is that space where human meets machine.
Yeah, it's the bridge. It facilitates that communication through all those interactive bits, buttons, icons, menus, navigation.
And now even things like voice commands or gestures.
Right. Those are interfaces too. It all comes down to applying interaction design principles and user psychology.
To make interfaces that are user-friendly, reliable, logical.
And engaging. You want people to actually enjoy using the product, not just tolerate it.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's the concept. How is it actually built? What are the nuts and bolts, the elements?
Well, every interface is made up of coded components. Some you see, some are more structural, behind the scenes.
And the sources break these down into categories.
Yeah, four main ones seem to cover most of it. First, input controls.
Okay, so that's how I give information to the system.
Exactly. Things like buttons you click, checkboxes, maybe drop-down menus.
Toggles, text fields where you type stuff in.
Right. All those ways you input data or make choices.
Got it. What's next?
Then you've got informational components. This is how the product gives information back to you.
Ah, like feedback.
Here are status updates. Think icons that quickly tell you something, notifications popping up, progress bars.
Oh, or those little tooltips that explain things when you hover over them.
Perfect example. All informational.
Okay, third category.
Navigational components. These help you move around within the product.
Finding your way.
Yep. So sliders to adjust things, search fields, obviously, tags for filtering content.
Breadcrumbs. Those trails that show you where you are in a site structure?
Exactly. Breadcrumbs are classic navigational components.
And the last one.
Finally, containers. These are more about organizing the interface.
Like boxes to group things?
Sort of, yeah. They group similar elements, manage the layout, help things adapt to different screen sizes.
So like headers or tabs maybe? Accordion menus that expand and collapse.
All great examples of containers. They structure the content.
It's amazing how these simple-sounding building blocks can create such vastly different experiences.
Absolutely. But they all share that goal.
Oh.
Making your interaction streamlined, logical, and hopefully pleasant.
And you mentioned interfaces aren't just screens anymore.
Right. The principles apply across different types. The sources highlighted three common ones.
The first one is probably what most people think of, graphical user interfaces, GUIs.
Yeah, that's the dominant type. What you're likely using right now on your phone or computer. images, icons, interacting with touch or a mouse.
Okay, what else?
Then there are gesture-based interfaces. These translate your physical movements in 3D space into commands.
Ah, like in VR or AR, waving your hands to do things.
Exactly. That's becoming much more important with augmented and virtual reality taking off.
Makes sense. And the third type?
Voice-controlled interfaces, or VUIs. Using your voice for navigation and commands.
Like Siri, Alexa, Cortana, those guys.
Precisely. Those are VUIs.
Okay. So this brings us back neatly to that UX question from the start. How do UI and UX relate? People seem to mix them up a lot.
They really do. And the sources are clear. There's a huge overlap. Fundamentally, UI can't exist without UX.
Yeah.
It's part of the experience.
Right. UI serves the overall user experience.
Exactly. Think of UX as the whole journey, the entire feeling. The UI is the tangible part you interact with that brings that experience to life.
It makes the features usable, performs the functions.
Yes. So the final experience you have is this combination, this synergy of both UI and UX working together, or sometimes working against each other if it's badly designed.
Yeah, true. Which means collaboration must be key.
Absolutely essential. Between UI designers, UX designers, researchers, developers, everyone needs to be on the same page.
Historically, was there more of a division, like UI focused only on pixels and UX on flows?
There was, yeah. UI often meant visual details, consistency, the look and feel. UX was more about user flows, information architecture, the bigger picture.
But that's changing.
Well, the sources suggest a more modern view is that roles should be based on a designer's actual competencies, not just rigid titles. Many designers have skills in both areas.
That makes sense. Focus on the skills, not just the label. Okay, so let's put ourselves in the shoes of a UI designer. What's actually on their to-do list day to day?
It's quite varied.
Yeah.
A big part is designing the actual UI elements we talked about, the buttons, icons, menus, making them look right.
And not just look right, but deciding how they work, right?
Yeah.
The interactivity.
Yes, exactly. What happens when you click this? What feedback do you get? That's a core UI task.
Yeah. What else?
Designing entire screens, figuring out the layout, the spacing, creating that visual hierarchy so you know it's important.
Making it flow intuitively.
Right. And a huge piece of that now is responsive design.
Ah, making sure it works on any screen size. Desktop, tablet, phone.
Yep. The interface has to adapt gracefully. That's a major consideration.
And then the actual styling. Colors, fonts.
Definitely. Using color theory to build palettes, choosing typography that's readable and fits the brand's personality.
And they often create the style guide, too, to keep everything consistent.
Often, yes. An art style guide is crucial for ensuring consistency across a large product or website, making sure every button looks like it belongs.
And are they involved earlier in the process, too?
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes starting with things like mood boards to explore visual direction, sketching wireframes.
Just rough layouts.
Yeah, basic layouts, and just sketching out different interface ideas before committing to more detailed designs.
Which sounds like it leads naturally into testing those ideas.
Absolutely. Testing is critical, and that's where prototypes come in.
Okay, so what are prototypes in this context?
They're basically interactive mock-ups. They let designers show their visual ideas in action without actual coding.
So you can click around and see how it feels.
Exactly. It's invaluable for catching flaws early, smoothing out the user flow, making sure it ticks all the boxes before you invest heavily in development.
Makes sense. Saves a lot of rework later, I imagine.
Huge amounts. And there are different levels of prototypes.
Right.
Low-fidelity prototypes are often just basic sketches, paper, whiteboard, very quick, low effort, just to communicate the core idea or flow.
Get the concept across.
Right. Then you move towards mid or high fidelity prototypes once the flow and screen layouts are more defined.
These look more like the final thing.
Much more. They might be clickable, moving between static screens that have medium to high visual detail. This is where you really fine-tune the interactions and visuals before the handoff to developers.
And what tools do they use for this? You mentioned Figma.
Figma's very popular, yeah.
Yeah.
Great for the design itself and for building those clickable prototypes. Adobe XD, Sketch, or other big ones.
That's an option.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, how much a specific designer does at each stage can vary a lot depending on the company or their specific role.
Understood. So building all this, it sounds like it takes more than just being good at drawing nice buttons. What skills are really essential?
Oh, for sure. It's a really diverse skill set. You need the visual eye, yes, but also strong soft skills.
Like what?
Communication is huge.
Yeah.
You have to clearly explain your designs to developers what things are supposed to do.
And justify them to clients or managers too, I guess.
Absolutely. Explaining why you made certain design choices is key. And then teamwork. Design doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right. You're working with UX people, developers, product managers.
Exactly. You need to collaborate, listen, solve problems together.
And empathy again, right? Putting yourself in the user's shoes.
Foundational. And linked to that, a really vital skill now is designing for accessibility and inclusivity.
Making sure everyone can use it, regardless of ability.
Yes. It can't be an afterthought. Prioritizing usability for all users, sometimes even over pure aesthetics. That's crucial.
Okay, those are the soft skills. What about the hard technical skills?
Well, proficiency in the tools is a must. You need to know your way around at least one of the main ones. Figma, Sketch, Adobe XD, InVision, etc.
Once you know one, are the others easier to pick up?
Generally, yes. The concepts are similar. And beyond the tools, you need a solid grasp of UI theory and best practices.
Like color theory, typography.
Yes, understanding how colors work together, the impact of different fonts, knowing common UI design patterns that users already recognize. Saves reinventing the wheel.
Got it. So bringing all that together, the theory, the skills, the process, what are some top tips for actually doing UI design successfully? What did the sources recommend?
Some really solid advice came through. The absolute #1 tip, put the user first, always.
Sounds simple, but probably easy to forget sometimes.
It can be. It means at every single decision point you have to ask, how does this affect the user? Does it make their life easier?
And part of that is making them feel in control.
Yes. That's a key outcome of good UI. You achieve that through simplicity, making it intuitive using those familiar patterns.
Letting people undo mistakes easily. That's a big one for me.
Huge. Easy error recovery. Also, removing distractions, giving clear feedback for actions. It all builds that sense of control.
Okay, user first. What else?
Do your homework. Competitor analysis is vital.
Seeing what else is out there.
Right. It helps you understand what users in that space expect. You can check user reviews for what they like or what's missing.
Learn the rules of the road for that type of app.
Exactly. Apply emerging standards and also see how others solve similar design problems you might be facing. Don't design in isolation.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Apply proven product design principles. Stay updated on standards for accessibility and inclusive design that came up again.
Right. Seems critical.
It is. Things like text contrast, color choices, keyboard navigation order. These aren't optional. Having an accessibility expert involved is often a really good idea.
Good point. And localization, too, if it's going global.
Yes, thinking about different languages and cultures early on.
Okay, final tip.
Use the right tools. Choose tools that support both the creative side and the technical side.
Tools that help you work efficiently and collaboratively.
Exactly. Things like good collaboration features, shared design libraries to maintain consistency, easy ways to get feedback, maybe being browser-based so you can work anywhere. Intuitive tools help create intuitive products.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. From defining UI design, its purpose.
Yeah, the core elements, the different types like GUI, VUI, gestures.
Untangling it from UX, looking at the day-to-day tasks.
The essential skills, both soft and hard.
And finishing with those really practical pro tips for success.
It's really clear it's this mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creativity, psychology, technical understanding. All aimed at making technology work better for you, the user.
Making it accessible, engaging, intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And, thinking about that idea that the best UI is practically invisible.
Yeah, the interface you don't even notice because it feels so natural.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If that's the ideal, what does that imply about the future? How will we interact with technology down the line?
And what does that mean for the role of the designer creating those perhaps increasingly invisible experiences?
Yeah, definitely something to think about.